Welcome to Experiencing Consciousness. My name is Dyba.
And I'm Dr. Kathryn Rossi. We're happy you're here.
So this is our first meeting in this series of podcasts that we are now launching. And my first question or, reflections are about where to start with. What would you say if we just start from some basic outline?
Sounds good. Sounds good. The biggest question to ask is, how do you have a satisfying life? People come in for psychotherapy because something needs to change in their lives. And but they've had a whole life before they met you. Sometimes people come in because they've got to recreate their life. Their life isn't working the way that it is, or they've had a loss that is so great that they really need to create a new life. So then the question becomes, okay, you're going to create a new life. How can you create one that's really satisfying? And what are the ingredients for that?
Yeah. And exactly what is actually satisfaction, right?
Well, yes. And when you're going to build a home, for instance, you need to build a really good foundation. So when you are jarred by something and events that have happened in your life, you got to relook at what is your foundation. What's important to you? What do you believe? And so this to me is it's a vast subject, to say the least. But I think that as we begin with what are the principles that make you human, I think that this opens up the door for that kind of satisfaction.
So another question would be, what are the principles that makes us human?
Well, when you're coming in for therapy, the first thing that you need to have is an open mind. Yeah. If you come in predetermined with what you already think and what you're already going to do, which hasn't been working, that when you just come in with an open mind of possibilities, this particular principle is really helpful. And the next one has to do with trust. I like to call it trust and verify. And so in developing that, there's a trust in yourself, there's a trust in your therapist, there's a trust in the process, there's a trust that there can be healing, that this opens up a positivity that's really important.
Positive attitudes of some sort.
Yes, but even deeper than the positive attitude, that where does trust fit in your life? And so a lot of people, that's one of the issues, they just don't trust. Well, how can you find what you can trust? And how can you develop that trust? Which gets into yet another principle, which is honesty.
Exactly. Because what I was thinking when you were talking about trust, the first thing that came to my mind is that these different kinds of trust, they don't go in package, right? It's not a set, they are separate. And so I'm thinking, okay, when I'm going to a therapy session, the first one, I may have a basic trust in myself, not always, but sometimes people have that. But I'm always telling my clients, my first-time clients, that it is a great act of courage to actually come to a therapy session to someone that is actually, that whom you don't know and who doesn't know you. So you are basically coming to someone, and so that actually means that you need to have that kind of initial trust that you are actually going to someone that knows their job, that initial part of trust. But then this is also a risky situation, because you actually don't know whom you're gonna meet. I mean, someone may have referred them to you, but that's still, you are coming to a session with someone you don't know, and the idea is that you are going to tell him or her, tell them the most difficult things that happened in your life and that you actually want to change or do something with. So I'm thinking to myself, that's totally different kind of trust. That's something that I mean, I don't know, what do you think? I mean, I'm thinking that probably develops in, like in a relationship.
Oh, absolutely it does. And when you think about the people in your life that you love, that you learn to trust them more each day. And so you get into it becomes comfortable. And having comfort is a huge value of where do you want to put comfort into your life.
And having comfort in therapy is also important. It's connected with feeling safe, right?
Well, feeling safe, but also when you think about the principles that make you you, where do you want to put comfort in? Like, how high on the list is comfort? And for me, that's really high on the list. That's a guiding principle that the more comfort that you can experience within yourself, the better your mind is going to work to solve problems. Is what's, if I ask you, well, what's the opposite of comfort? What might you say?
Discomfort.
Or you might say anxiety.
I was thinking about stress.
Yeah, or you might say the unknown. Like, there's not one, it's with all of these things, there's, infinite numbers of ways that you could respond to it. But if comfort is important to you, if it's something you reach for each day, it becomes a guiding principle. And wouldn't it be nice for people who are coming in for therapy and they're obviously uncomfortable or they wouldn't be there? But how much do you want to find comfort in your life? And one thing I kind of glossed over a little bit, but it's honesty. The most important person to be honest with is yourself. And that kind of integrity of being able to be an individual, but to be really honest with yourself, where you're not fooling yourself. So I think that most people aren't really thinking about what makes them them. And I believe that it's really, really important of what you bring to the table. What are your morals? What are your ethics? What's important to you? What in your life do you know helps you to grow, helps you to be a better person, helps you to be able to fearlessly go forward, to face whatever you need to face so that you can get to the other side of it. It's interesting, is it not?
Yeah, and I'm thinking about, relations and correlations between those values that you named. For example, I'm thinking about comfort, and again, as with trust, there is I'm thinking about different kinds of comfort and different kinds of discomfort. Like, think, for example, about the anxiety client, right? Someone who comes to you and says, for example, I have a social fear. And so whenever I'm out there somewhere and there's more than like 2 people, I'm starting to get anxious, and I'm thinking about, the thoughts are starting to come to my mind that something's going to happen and that no one's going to notice, for example. So obviously, at some point, the therapy is going to involve some kind of ways or procedures to help them to overcome that fear, or make it, you know, more, you know, generally to overcome it in some way. And so there is this comfort that, for example, the trust and the trust that is evolving, and the strong, solid relationship gives the people in the office, so that they be able to engage in something that's gonna fill them with not so much of comfort, right?
No, not in the beginning. The
Yeah,
comfort
exactly.
comes from a job well done. You know, comfort comes in the end. The fearlessness, I think, is really important.
Yeah.
I was working with somebody the other day who was quite anxious, shaking, right? Shaking. And I don't know, I really enjoy, I call it the opposition of the opposites. And so, you know, clearly this person was uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And so I said, you know, when people go into ecstasy, they'll shake in ecstasy. And which is a very different point of view on shaking, isn't it?
And it's a beautiful reframing.
Well, and so then you think to yourself, maybe there's another possible way that I can react when I'm looking at myself shaking. And without even asking the person to do anything, you know that they're going to start experimenting with this. You know, and so if you're shaking, but it turns out it's really in ecstasy and happiness, it's like, well, I'm not disturbed about that. I'm not uncomfortable about that. And so each time there's an opportunity. And as humans, we're all over the map. Like, you know, you can experience every emotion possible within an hour and a half or two. And so you can experience the greatest joy. You could experience, like, you know, being really down. And when there's this internal requirement to like just be one way, to just be happy or just be whatever, we can't do that as humans. We have a wave nature of consciousness and a wave nature of emotion. But if at the base of that, it's like, yes, I do, but, you know, I would like to invite more comfort into my life. I'd like to invite more honesty into my life. I'd like to invite more trust into my life. I really would like to have more of an open mind of possibilities where a shaking body could be ecstasy. You know, that's where, so all of these things, they dovetail together. And so in the course of therapy, there's a couple things that people experience traditionally each time in therapy, only you don't really think about it. And the first one is this concept of not knowing. I really don't know. And when I'm working with someone and we get to the I don't know, where they don't really know what to do, and I say, and I don't know what to do either. Now,
honesty, that's the principle of honesty, right?
And that's honesty. The difference, Jan, is that when I get to the I don't know within the course of the therapy session, I'm like, oh, good. Because if I don't know, and if you don't know, then something new is going to be created. And it's the newness, it's that creativity, it's that opening of the mind for growing consciousness that is really important. But for most people, they're very disturbed. I really don't know, doctor, I really don't know. And I'm shaking, I'm anxious, I really don't know. And so that can be turned around pretty quickly when there's an excitement about the fact that, oh, good, we don't know. You know, so we can't go to a book and say, okay, here's the protocol. It's that, no, this needs to be created.
Yeah.
And isn't that what individualized medicine is?
Exactly.
It begins with, I don't know. Who would have thought that, of how important I don't know is?
Yeah, but my reflection here is that to do that kind of brilliant reframing, one needs to know how to do it. But also the most important thing is that I mean, at least the way I'm thinking about it, is that there is this moment where the therapy, when the therapist says, I don't know, they need to be comfortable with that, so that not see
Yes.
the anxiety within the client, you know, so that it won't be something like, fuck, I don't know. What is
It's like, what am I doing here, doctor? You don't know?
exactly.
And of course, we're, you know, we're groomed in our training is that you better know. You better know.
Yeah.
But I'm so respectful of you. I'm not going to tell you what to do. And, you know, I don't know what's best for you. I know how to help you find what's best for you. And that's my genius. And so these are very different ways of thinking, but there's a freedom that is so contagious. And so these kind of principles, open mind, trust, honesty, comfort, you know, they sound so vague when you're starting to talk about them, but then when they're swirling and making a dance together, you know, you understand the dynamics of it. And so, of course, you can imagine when I said to this woman, you know, there's people that they shake in ecstasy. That's a shock, isn't it? That's a surprise. And so one of the principles also is appropriate psychological shocks and surprises. And because if you're going to do things the same way you've always done them, what makes you think there's going to be a different outcome?
Exactly. I think it wasn't that actually Einstein who said that the crazy person is the one who does the same kind of thing all over again and each time expects different outcomes.
I think that that's true. And of course, you know, we can laugh about this because like we all do it, you know, we're doing things the same way, but we're hoping for a different outcome. And so I have, you know, huge compassion for this. And in my thinking and in my way, I'm so fascinated that I don't have criticism that goes through my mind. But so when you're really, you know, shocked and surprised, you know, most people, they're not so comfortable with that. But imagine if you could become comfortable with that. It's like, oh, good, I'm being jarred out of the old ways of doing things for the possibility of new ways. And so, in short, being responsive in the moment. So I realized that, you know, as I'm talking about these principles, that they're unusual. You know, you don't open up a book and say, okay, well, if you're gonna, you know, change your life, if you're going to go into therapy, what principles might you like to consider? But these are principles that I think are important. And if I'm doing my job right, you're going to be thinking of half a dozen more principles that are important to you. Remember that trust but verify thing that I said? Mm-hmm. It's that, you know, okay, you know, Kathryn has these ideas. Gee, I like this one, and this one, but not this one. You know, I'm saying, great, you know, make your own list of principles that are really important to you to move your life forward. Expand it. And knowing that that it's going to ebb and flow and change throughout your lifetime. There are no absolutes. You just keep growing.
Mm-hmm. And when I'm also thinking, but by the way, to actually go with that principle means to go into yourself and look into yourself, what's important to you. And that's actually, sometimes it's I mean, from my experience, to some people that I work with, sometimes that's one of the challenges of therapy, to actually discover that, when you know that, as I think Viktor Frankl would said, then you've got your meaning that kind of, moves you forward in a way, in a spectacular way. But I'm also thinking, you said that these principles may seem kind of easy, but I'm certain that they are not.
They're always changing is the thing. It's like, how do you get on the moving train? It's like, you hope it slows down at the station so you can get in, and that it's dynamic. And this is what it means to be human, is that we're constantly moving and changing and reorienting, and nothing stays the same is probably the only truth there is in the universe.
Exactly. Everything's kind of move.
Yeah. I mean, even that we perceive that we're in a room and nothing is moving, but how fast does the earth move?
Across space, I've heard few thousand kilometers per hour or something like that.
I mean, it's huge, and it's spinning too. It's spinning and it's moving, and we don't perceive that. But but what nature is it's constantly moving and evolving, and the earth is actually expanding. Like, I mean, that this just is like mind-blowing in the best possible way, is to think that the universe is expanding, the earth is expanding, everything is expanding. Well, that's your consciousness too, because nothing stays the same. And when we try to make it stay the same, this is almost guaranteed unhappiness.
Yeah, because we're frozen, right? And
yeah, and would I like for things to stay the same? Gosh, you betcha. I mean, predictability, this and that. And that's why having the principles that are important. Now, a principle that I didn't make mention that is a huge guiding factor in my life is love. And if there's one thing I want to see expand in my life on a daily basis, it's I want to love more. I want to be able to love more. I want to be able to receive love. I look for it. And guess what? I find it. And it's honest. And I can trust it.
This was another episode of our Experiencing Consciousness podcast. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Jan. You're the best. Be well, be happy, celebrate life.